That is, from 7 to 8 o'clock, we assign that time to the people who are exhibitors, who do not have a position on the agenda, on the regular speaker's agenda. And we will give them 5 minutes or more, and I think it'll be more, to explain what they have at their exhibit. Excuse me. So that they don't have to answer the same question 200 or 300 or 400 times as what's this all about. So it'll give you a quick overview of 5, 6, 8, or 10 exhibits between 7 and 8 o'clock tonight before we get into the speaker of the evening. That's what will happen at 7 o'clock. That's proved to be quite popular, and our crowds have grown each year, finding that that's pretty interesting to hear the story of the various exhibits. Now, if they're a speaker, they do not get that time because they already have a spot on the program. That happens at 7 sharp, so be back after the evening lunch or dinner break. Now, co-hosting us this year is the Hieronymus Energy Conference. They have foregone their conference, which they have annually in January in Georgia, to come down and be with us. And so 3 of the speakers are going to be from the Hieronymus group, and we're very happy to have again this year, and she's been with us every year but one of all of our 7 or 8 years. This will be the 8th year now with conferences. Dr. Sarah Hieronymus is now the head of it, and if you heard her last night, you know that she's the widow of the late Galen Hieronymus and worked with him with a number of years on a lot of their projects. They do all kinds of research work, an enormous amount of it in many areas of energy, frequency, radionic type research. And I'm happy to introduce Dr. Sarah Hieronymus, who will introduce Jack True, our next speaker. Welcome again, Dr. Sarah, if you will, please.
Thank you very much. I hardly know what to say. We've been so happy with this conference and with Global Sciences, and we feel like that we have so many friends in this organization. We've been with them so much. This young man whom I introduced to you is from Los Angeles by way of Santa Monica. He was the head of a holistic medical clinic out there and worked with several doctors, and one of whom has written a book which mentions him. I find him to be very knowledgeable. He came to us by choice. You know, I was really overwhelmed with all the work I was having to do, and I said, oh, Lord, send me some help. And the next thing I knew, here came a guy from California that wanted an instrument. But I could hardly get him to sit still long enough to learn to use it because he was out looking at the mountains and the falls and touring around all over the beautiful Appalachian Mountains in North Georgia. He came down to Carrollton to the International Psychotronics Association meeting, and I was there. And then later on, he came to our conference up in North Georgia last year in Dillard, Georgia, where we met for several days and had a good time together. And finally, I got a phone call from him from California in March saying, I'm all loaded up. I've got my dog and my car and everything, all my books in the truck, and I'm on my way. So he came down to Clayton, Georgia, and he's been living there ever since. And then he contaminated his brother also with the ideas of living in North Georgia. So Joe is working up there. He is a registered nurse with a very good degree in nursing. So I've been very, very happy to have Jack. He is on our staff at Advanced Sciences, and he does a tremendous amount of work for us. And he shares a great deal of what he knows because he's a very knowledgeable person. So I'm going to turn the mic over to him and let him tell you some of the things he knows. I've been very pleased that he agreed to do this for us. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all had a nice lunch. I had to kind of have a light lunch because otherwise I'd have that mid-afternoon slump that kind of happens to you. I used to teach school at one time, and I noticed that after lunch some of my students would fall asleep, you know. Then they wake up again. But I often thought that they might have done better that way, because maybe they got a lot of that subliminal or sleep learning sometimes, you know, if you're familiar with that. Well, anyway, this afternoon I'm going to talk about energy and the morphic field, especially the morphic field of our own planet, Earth. And if you're not familiar with some of the concepts, I've written down most of the terminology here that I'm going to be speaking about, and it's all up on the blackboard, and I will speak about it. And if you don't have a clear vision to see it, perhaps you just stand up and check out the word. As an energy researcher, I know that everything, all of our worldly existence here on this planet, emanates energy. We are energy systems. We take in energy and we give off energy. And energy, in this sense, has its own rules and regulations. And these rules and regulations have been known really by mankind for thousands of years, and our culture seems to be rediscovering a lot of things that have already been known in other cultures. And when I studied health, for instance, and I started to study homeopathy, I found out that Samuel Hahnemann was not really the discoverer of homeopathy. This had existed in many, many cultures, the principles. Probably 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, they were using homeopathy in other places, and we just discovered it rediscovered it in the last 200 years. So we're going to move into a discussion of energies. And right now there is a movement in science. I guess we've all heard of the word quantum physics. It used to be quantum mechanics, but that's a misnomer now. We should really just say quantum physics. And that is part of a branch or part of the new movement in science called the new sciences. There's also a whole movement in biology called the new biology. And of course in the health field we have it being called holistic medicine or ecological medicine. And now there's even a few references to quantum healing. And these are making reference to these laws of energy that originally, starting with about 90 years ago, our physicists have begun to discover. So we're going to start out talking with what is called the morphic field. Morphic field is the field of energy that creates form. And it's right here in green on the blackboard. When I started to research this, I sometimes do little diagrams to myself, because sometimes that is a better way. The visual way is sometimes better than the verbal or trying to understand it intellectually or rationally. So I brought some of my drawings that were crude, and I was helped by an associate of mine in developing these ideas onto some transparencies. And so when you have the morphic, to explain all of the, or to visualize all of the phenomena that we're going to talk about, and all the aspects of the energy in the morphic field of the Earth, and when you put it all together and try to visualize, it's pretty confusing and complex. It looks like a lot of scribbles. Can everybody see it? Turn the lights down. You got some idea. It's not meant to be figured out at this point from what's happening there, because it looks like just total confusion. But I assure you that you'll understand a lot of this by the time we're done here. Okay. First, we start out with ourselves. I don't know if that's supposed to be me. Tummy's not big enough, so I guess it's not me. But we are surrounded by a field of vibrating energy, frequencies, if you will, all different types of energies. And we are surrounded by these, and we're also emanating these at all times. Now, we come into contact with external energies at all times, dealing with the environment. We come into contact with pollutions and different things, good energies and bad energies. And so here's a little bugger of a toxin here that's coming into our field of energy. This would be an external type of energy coming into our field. And we also generate from ourselves into our own field energy back into ourselves. So we have these two types of basic energetic movements, the internal and the external. Now, what we mean by the morphic field of the Earth, our own individual field of energy here that we are generating and taking in and putting together, creating and taking apart at all times, depending on the external conditions and also our internal conditions, that energy gets transferred to the energy of the planet, of our Earth, and becomes the morphic field of the Earth. So besides having our own field of energy that we're constantly dealing with, we also feel we feed the field of energy that's been given a lot of names in the past. Ether is one of the metaphysical terms that it's been called. It's been called the Ashkaic record. It's been called the news field. The new concept in this terminology by the new biologist has been called the morphogenic field, the form-generating field. That's been now shortened to the just plain morphic field. Oh, by the way, an interesting thing, the word morphic is derived from the Greek god Morpheus. Morpheus is the god of sleep and illusion. And so there's an interesting connection there which we'll go into, and also the word morphine is derived from the same root. So now we are starting to somehow transfer this energy into the morphic field of the planet. Now when I talk about energy, most of us tend to think, because we live in such a material world, we tend to think of this energy as physical or materialistic type of energy. So our language reflects that. And we tend to think of energy in kinetic terms as a force. But this energy is not really a force or kinetic in that sense. The energy is really information. Some type of basic knowledge or know-how, information. And even if you look at the word information, you'll see that you could take out the in, and you get information using the word formation. So the process of formation is from the information. So we are informing the system here around the Earth with our own energies. This is a collective process. It's not just individual. We have all kinds of people around the world that are informing the morphic field with various types of information. And so this energy is coming from a lot of different sources. I might add that the energy, this information, does not just come from us human beings. It comes from all the animals, all the plants, all the trees, all living things, and all living things' existence or experience in the world is constantly this interplay of energy. Now, if we feed into the field energy and information, the energy also comes back from the field. There is a type of resonance that is occurring, a type of flow, an inflow and outflow. So other fields of energy, other forms that have appeared, other types of information are eventually going to come back to us from the field as we tap into the field with some type of connection to it. This one here is a little disease energy that's been somehow accumulated into the morphic field of the Earth, and it has then radiated, or it has been broadcast or transferred or gone back to affecting someone, disturbing.
Excuse me. They said it's a little small for them to see back there.
Oh, okay.
Can we move this back a little bit?
Sure.
And enlarge the picture? And then bring it down and focus it a little bit. Well, if you move that, all you have to do is move that a couple of feet. And then make it like bigger.
Is that better?
Point to the screen.
They're not blurred, they're just rough, so I think your eyes are. Okay, so this one here was a little disease energy that somehow accumulated in the morphic field, and now it's radiating back and affecting that person. And that person is not necessarily the person who generated the energy. This energy can affect anybody, and it's not necessarily the energy that was originally generated by that person out of their own field. I can come back to these if there's anyone who... Now, there is other energy field, or the field of energy that's around us not only goes off into the morphic field, but it also affects, we're also connected to each other by that same process. So in effect, we're all affecting each other all the time, regardless of space or time. When you get into the laws of this higher type of energy, if you will, you'll find that the energy does not dissipate or attenuate over time or space. It is forever. And the quantum physicists have an interesting explanation for this, which I'll go into a little bit later. So, we end up with our planet, and we also could include our solar system and our universe and our galaxy and Milky Way and so on and so forth, because all of the morphic field is there. But I just wanted to concentrate mainly on the Earth and its field of energy that is there. It's this field of information that we are all embedded in, and we are constantly being informed. In other words, our form, our very physical form, is coming from that energy. And we are giving off energy, and that energy is feeding the form, and it may come back to misinform us. So in other words, we have the information, and we have this outformation. The energy's going out, energy's coming in. And it might not always be the correct kind of energy coming back, so we can become misinformed by that energy. And we can also misoutform the energy that's going in. So you may say, well, what are some examples of this? Well, virtually you can take any phenomena or any manifestation, whether it's very physical or kind of etheric, and analyze it in terms of what's happening with the energy. I've made a list here: chemical, nuclear, electromagnetic, gravity, time, space, and biology or biological. These energies here can be very positive for life on this planet, or it could be very negative. And right now, we're all very concerned with pollution and contamination, and we have a lot of environmental concerns and ecological concerns. And these, a lot of the ones that we hear about are on the chemical level with the toxins in agriculture and the toxins in the food supply and so on. We're also aware of the nuclear radiations that have come from nuclear power plants and our bomb testing programs and things like that. Not people here, but not the general population is not aware of the dangers of electromagnetic pollution across the full spectrum, from the high frequencies to the extremely low frequencies, in which we are bombarded with and which has saturated our planet at this period of time. And also we have a gravitational pollution or energy that's happening, and this is a result of speed and position to speed. The human body in the morphic field, and as it has been fed for millions of years in evolutionary history, was never designed for the certain stresses of overcoming gravity. This has grave consequences for people who travel a lot in airplanes or travel fast, and even driving in a car creates stresses on our body, physical stresses, let alone emotional stresses, and mental stresses that were never meant to be. We're not formed that way. And so we have a lot of problems with gravity. Interesting thing, Edgar Mitchell told me, the astronaut who went to the moon and did the ESP experiments and later formed the Institute of Noetic Sciences, told me about a year ago in Los Angeles that he felt ultimately that the space race would have to be abandoned, because we would have to, we cannot physically move our bodies into space. We would have to find some other way of traveling. So of course that would take us out of the physical realm and perhaps into the world of astral or mental travel, only because of the gravitational limitations. Our bones compress and the joints hit each other in outer space when we don't have gravity. And so there's problems with that. There's other problems with the electromagnetic functioning of your brain in outer space. Okay, time and space. A lot of people don't think that these can be polluted. What do you mean, time pollution? Time pollution is called temporal density. Too much happening at one time. We become overloaded. Too many events occupying for our attention, our time span. And this is what they call temporal density. Same thing with space. Space can be polluted. Our space, it's a function of density. If we had too many people in this room, certain phenomena would start to occur. That's a direct result of a pollution or contamination, just because we had too many people occupying the same space. And this is happening. Just look at any modern city, and you'll see that as people crowd together, you start to get all kinds of manifestations that you just don't find at lower densities. Biological contamination and biological pollution is now starting to occur and has occurred with all of the genetic engineering that they're doing, manipulation of the genes, recombinating DNA and RNA that we have experience with, and putting them into other species. That's the real danger. Cross-species transfer of DNA and RNA. These are all just very, very physical, real kinds of energies that all of us can really, grab hold of. When we switch into the other energies that are more etheric, don't forget, all these are composed of energy. They all feed the morphic field. We feed them, and they feed back to us. You have other types of energies that feed the morphic field. Energy of thought, the energy of emotions, the energy of dreams. In fact, all states of consciousness, hypnosis, drug-induced states, altered states of consciousness, states of consciousness induced by disease, all that kind of stuff. In fact, all phenomena across the board, all experience, all actions, all behaviors, all structures of any kind, and all organizations of any kind ultimately are energy. And that energy is in the field, in the morphic field. The morphic field feeds back. So, if this is so, and it is, according to the best of scientific minds, and we can prove it with our own experiences. The old Greek god Morpheus was right. Everything that we see is really an illusion if we think of it as solid and real. It's really not. It's composed of energy, and this energy is constantly being created, organized and disorganized. Organizing forms and structures and then dissipating. So we're in this constant flow in and out of energies of all types. The root from morphine, which is derived from opium, this is the modern synthetic of opium, and that comes from the poppy plant, but the opium eaters spoke of their opium dreams in which the world appeared as an illusion. Everything was not as it really seemed, and they began on this drug to see the breakdown into the energy patterns and all that kind of stuff on this type of drug, and the English opium eaters at the time wrote about it, and it's kind of interesting reading because it will describe a lot of things in terms of energy. Now, you have this morphic field. Let me just take this off for a minute. You have this morphic field, and if you are feeding the field and the field is feeding you back a similar type of energy, and things seem to be in balance or in harmony there, then you have what's called morphic resonance. You are resonating properly with the field. If not, you're trying to overcome the field and create something else. In the case of human disease, even animal and plant disease, we have somehow become more involved in the morphic field of disease, the breakdown of our organs and cellular functioning. We become connected to that more than we have been connected to the state of health or the energies of health. And this morphic field is very, very powerful. None of us can escape it. We can do a lot of things to try to alter it. And for that reason, we have to watch our thoughts and our emotions and our behavior and how we treat the world around us, other people, animals, our plants, our environment, because it will all come back to us sooner or later, whether it's in the kind of information that we would want or misinformation that we would not want. So this is what's happening. Now, in homeopathy, they talk about miasms. Hahnemann talked about miasms. Now, he talked about some miasms that existed at the time: cancer, tuberculosis, syphilitic miasms. And these were energies. These were energies that were present. The person did not have TB, cancer, or syphilis, but the person had the energies of cancer, syphilis, or tuberculosis. And unless those energies were somehow removed, were no longer in that person's individual field, that person would never achieve a healthful state because those energies would always interfere with what you were trying to do. They were a kind of a blocking energy. Dr. Hieronymus described it in that terms, that there were these energies that, holding energies that prevented other types of energies from being taken care of. So when I started to look at these miasms, I saw many situations where a person would go to a doctor and supposedly get cured, but really they were not healed because these miasms were still there. And so, yeah, the symptoms of whatever current disease they had seemed to dissipate and go aside, but they would come back. And we probably would all have experience with either someone that we know or in our family or whatever, of which the treatment that they got was successful, but then they regressed back into it. The condition reoccurred. And when you start to look at that, you will see, like for instance, in the case of cancer, a person goes in and has chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery, and that seems to take care of the tumor for a while. But if the energetic conditions that gave rise to that tumor to begin with are not taken care of, sooner or later they're going to manifest from that energy, that field that they're still connected to, the morphic field. They're going to manifest the cancer either in some other place of their body or some other equally devastating disease is going to come upon them. And this happens over and over and over again. So we have to start to look at this field of energy and start to really think about, gee, what are my thoughts? You know, are they contributing to health or are they contributing to disease? And the morphic field, interestingly enough, only will accept energy in a direct fashion. It doesn't understand putting negative connotations and things like that on things. So if we have a negative thought, the only way of dissipating the energy from that negative thought is not by saying, oh, I thought a negative thought, I shouldn't have thought that. Oh, no. You immediately have to replace the negative thought with a positive thought. So when you think something bad about a person, as soon as you realize or are conscious that you have done that, now you've fed the field, the negativity. The only way that you can overcome it is by creating a stronger field of some positive statements about that person. This is what's being referred into in the current metaphysical rumblings out of California as unconditional love. And it's true. It really is true. I was once told there's only really two emotions, love or fear. And so we have to replace fear with love, because if we don't, the fear will come back and manifest. Whatever we feared will come and manifest sooner or later. You know, Churchill said that. You know, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I don't know why he said it, but it was pretty good. So thoughts and emotions, states of consciousness, we want to try to get in these very positive, life-affirming modes rather than continuing on in the negativity. So the next thing I'd like to discuss is some of my thoughts on what are we really involved in as far as what are we doing to ourselves right now. Because you see, ultimately what happens is, there was a song described not too long ago about, you know, we are the world. And that's truly the case. Each one of you is the world. We're all the world. And we're all connected in this field. Of course, that's what the metaphysical teachings would have us believe, and also the physicists say that. We're all connected. So we have some problems that we have collectively generated out of our society now that we're going through. We have a tremendous amount of violence, tremendous amount of drug problems and homelessness and all kinds of social things. But what we're doing is, with those things, is we're keeping the field going by focusing on the negativity. If you constantly talk about how bad it is, it's only going to get worse because you're feeding it the negative energy. Start to talk about how good it is, no matter what it is, you know. What's that old saying? Try to find the good in everybody. Well, also the good in everything. Every phenomena that's going on, try to find something good in it, some purpose. If you can't, don't think about how negative it is. Just go on into something that you can think about in a positive way. Don't feed this field more and more negative energy. One of the things that really disturbs me is this negative field of energy that we're all being affected by is the violence. Is the violence. We are bombarded in this culture by violence on television, song lyrics, cartoons that children watch on TV. Novels and things like that, violence. The average child, by entering first grade, has seen over 50,000 murders on television. This is children of the 80s. It was less in the 70s, but it's gone up to somewhere around 50,000. the effect of television on us is really just incredible. I'll just give you a figure here. A student in high school today, graduating in 1990, has spent 18,000 hours of his life, or her life, in front of television. Has spent only 12,000 hours in school, and has spent only 3,000 hours with his or her parents. So what is the energy, what is influencing our children? The television, more than anything else, if you look at it. Look at the content there, okay? It's all going to come back to haunt us, and it's happening now. There's no morality to this field of energy. It just works. That's the way it is. You know, it doesn't qualify between kind of a good and evil, or a plus and a minus, or a negative and a positive. It's energy goes in, energy comes back. What we sow, we're going to reap sooner or later. It's no coincidence that we have an alarming rise in birth defects when we have a continuing rise in aborting fetuses. There is a connection there. So when we look at the abortion issue, it's not just a single issue of just for the woman to be concerned with. This is a problem for society, our society, and the whole world. Because if we feed that field destructive energy of aborting life, it is going to come back and affect us sooner or later. This has been demonstrated a lot of times in the animal research that has gone on. Not that I'm a proponent of animal research, because I'm not, because I don't think you should harm life in order to benefit one particular species, because killing is killing. And we've all seen what killing does. We have tried to kill so many things. We've killed insects in our farming. We've tried to kill germs in our medicine. And all of that killing has come back to haunt us. It's killing us now because of the contamination and pollutions in these various things. Are there any questions up to this point you might want to discuss? Yes. Oh, okay. Probably the most used animal in all kinds of research has been the mouse. If you're keeping up with the modern disease burden, and our diseases are only getting worse and worse and worse, you'll find out that a lot of other organisms are carried on the little mouse, because the little mouse can virtually go anywhere in houses, buildings, offices, out in the field. So there's been a disturbance of their energy. They've been subjected to a lot of brutal conditions in the laboratorial work, and sooner or later that's going to manifest in some effect towards us. The mouse carries the organism that's been associated, carries the ticks that have been associated with Lyme disease, which is a spirochete-based disease. And so that's one of the things. The thing that really frightens me is they're genetically altering the mouse. They're putting human genes into a mouse, the human immune system genes into a mouse, and that's all going to mutate and change the characteristics, not only physically but energetic. Do you want mouse energy? No, we're a separate species. We don't want that interjection of energy on this very fundamental level where it's going to affect us. And it has already started to do that. A good case in point with a specific disease is cancer. There have been billions of dollars spent on the war on cancer, and research using the animals in the laboratory, trying to create or recreate the cancerous conditions in human beings. Well, the cancerous conditions in human beings have their own unique energy to them. It is not the same as a mouse getting cancer. That's a whole totally different morphic field, if you will, of energy that's happening with the mouse. And you can go out in the country and catch wild mice all you want, and you don't find any cancer in wild mice. So it is not something that is natural to them. And so we've tried to artificially induce cancer in the mice and then find treatments, primarily new chemotherapy or new radiation or new types of surgical things, into another life form that doesn't have that problem. And yet we haven't, and that has it hasn't dented the cancer problem. We have more cancer now than ever. In fact, qualitatively and quantitatively, the cancer is much worse than it was just a few years ago, because now you have cancer erupting in young children, even in infants. Types of cancer are appearing that were never seen, only except with old age. You see? So we have disturbed that in some way. And I think that type of activity, trying to artificially induce disease in the name of human benefits, has got to stop. They told us, for instance, you know, that DDT was so safe to use. You know, it was okay, use it, because we're going to have better food and bigger vegetables and bigger crops. And so they went and killed and poisoned and did that. And then years and years later, we find out the results of that. So it's just a bad concept to get into, because it's getting into negative and killing and trying to manipulate, control, manage nature. And we should be living in cooperation and harmony and balance and love, not fear of nature. And that all comes out of fear. Fear that you have to control all the circumstances around you or something might happen. It's much better to get into the love spaces or love energy and start to work with that. It's much more effective with your children, with your lives, your professions, your activities. Any other questions? Yes?
What is the relationship between vibration, color, sound, and the morphic field? And if I generate a sound or a color or a vibration, am I able to alter my relationship with the field?
Well, the question was, with color and sound and vibrations of various sorts, are you able to alter what's already created in the morphic field? And most definitely, yes. There are a lot of different modalities that you can use working with energy to start sending out the good energies to overcome probably what's already been happening. In other words, you would neutralize it or overlap it or come up with a better type of resonance. You're out of sync when you have a disease. Disease, you know, look at it. It's dis-ease. You're not at ease anymore. When you're at ease, you're healthy and happy, holy. And these all have the same kind of roots. So the idea is to go back into harmony, balance, to become whole again. And interestingly enough, we all have the innate capacity to do that, self-healing. Our planet has it. Plants have it. Trees have it. Animals have it. The microorganisms have it. So we just have to tap into methods that facilitate that. Our whole methodology of medical treatment is totally out of balance and out of whack, along with other activities. So yes, you can use those energies. I particularly like color and sound. Yes?
Some research that shows the effect of, say, a dead bacterial organism on living organisms when it's put into that colony. Are you aware of any research that's been done on mass human waste disposal systems and their interactive effect back to the body? Has there been any research done there, you know?
Yes, there has been some things going on. One of the problems right now that's being investigated, I forget who's doing the research, but The whole human waste disposal problem, sewage treatment, is a horrendous problem from many, many different levels. If you study other cultures, you'll see that they do not transport their human waste. They recycle it on the spot somewhere. We transport ours to centralized collection systems and try to get rid of it. And we collect it like that, and what they call bioaccumulate it, we run into problems because now we have a concentration of it where it shouldn't be, and it's really hard to get rid of it. So some of the European movement in the ecological and green awareness movement, green political parties in Europe are talking about degradable toilets. They have them in Sweden now, in which there's no discharge from the toilet. It's all handled right there, kind of like what you have in trailers and recreational vehicles. Now, one of the other so that's a whole area that has to be investigated. The disposable diapers is another huge problem. Now, now we're just talking like on the physical level. You know, this is real chemical pollution here and biological pollution. Instead of being treated as sewage, the disposable diapers are going right to the dump sites. Now, they're bioaccumulating. 10% of the weight and the mass of a dump site is with diapers, if you can believe it, but disposable diapers. And that's going to seep into the ground, into the water. It's going to seep into that land. It's not chemical waste, it's biological waste. It's going to affect the organisms that live in that ground and that water. Those organisms are going to spread out and come back to haunt us.
I was thinking more from the point of view of resonant energy systems in a waste cell that gets deposited along with other waste cells that carry energies that don't belong in this one, and then resonating back to the source of the waste, time and space being irrelevant. Is there any research on that?
Well, there's still a question of the physical thing is still there, okay? So, yes, we can use higher energies to dissipate what we've already manifested. But if we keep re-manifesting the conditions, we're never going to catch up. So we have an example of Dr. Sarah Hieronymus told me a story about once that they were using energies to help with a cat that was polluted with chlorine because of its drinking water supply. And you can alter the energies of that cat forever, but as long as you're putting the chlorine back in the cat, you see, you never can clear up the condition. So I don't like to use, personally, I don't like to use dead energies. I like to use energies that are alive. So as opposed to using a dead organism, I'd rather use a living organism that has healthy energies and use that to treat, with those energies, use it to treat something that's not experiencing health. Question?
Often had a curiosity about what we do to ourselves energetically as blood donors.
Oh, yes. The blood testing is a horrendous problem. There is energy that radiates from your blood, and as that is collected and put in massive blood. So if you take a whole bunch of blood that all has taken from people with cancer, and you put that next to a vial of blood from a person who doesn't have cancer, the energies of the cancer, the subtle energies of the cancer, are going to radiate into the other blood. And if there is enough bombardment, so to speak, and enough of that happening, as well as all the other conditions of energy that go to make up cancer, that person has a more likelihood of developing it than someone that didn't get subjected to all that blood being put together. There's really something to it about blood testing, the dangers of testing blood like that, and the dangers of transfusions, and the dangers of using manufactured blood products. See, now when you go in the hospital and get a blood transfusion, you think you're getting live blood. You're not. You're getting synthetic blood. So they've taken live blood, pulled it apart, manipulated it, and every bag of blood is called a blood product. It doesn't say 100% pure blood. You know, it's been manufactured, and those processes are patented. And there's a real danger there. I think it's really weakening us, as well as everything else that we've weakened. I guess one more question. We have time for one more. Well, there was one.
This whole thing of transferring organs from one person to another, it's really.
Well, you're going to be connected to the morphic field of the other person.
Right. And you know what that is.
Some of the heart transplant patients, I don't think that's a solution, because obviously we can't give everybody a heart transplant. The other thing is it's too much concentration of our resources into just way when there's a problem instead of putting more resources into preventing the problem. Most of the heart transplant patients have had psychological studies done on them, and the knowledge has been totally squashed, really, because, well, and those reports have said in the journals that there was total personality and relationship changes after that. Your heart is your relationship with those around you in your world. It's not just a pump, you know, it's a real organ of consciousness. And when you get somebody else's organ of consciousness into your body, you're going to have totally different relationships. But since MDs don't read, you know, the psychological stuff, you know.
Jack, I think you're through.
Okay.
Thank you.